I guess my love for drag racing started with my Uncle Ray and my cousin Paul back in the mid-60s. My cousin Paul, I wasn't even old enough to drive yet. My cousin Paul, who lives in Shelby, we decided one Saturday night when we were out cruising Hardee's and things that kids do back then, that we would go down to the drag strip. Never been to a drag strip. So we went down to Shady Side. Of course, it was closed, but we snuck in the gate and made a pass in his car, which was a 71 Plymouth Duster at the time. Wasn't any lights or anything. We shouldn't even been down there, but it kind of got me hooked. A few months later, my dad took me to a national event to see Ronnie Sock's race. And once I saw Ronnie Sock's race, as good as he was in 4-speed, I was just stuck. Everything from that point on, the most that interested me was anything to do with the car. So got a little older and I started working on cars and started building cars. But mid-80s, I had the chance to get a real drag car. Before, it had been just mainly street cars and playing with stuff like that. My first real race car was a 65 Chevelle. Had a LS7 big block in it, and didn't run all that fast. It runs 7.0s or something like that. But I just, that was, I thought I was doing something. So, as all drag racers do, you work on your car, you get to run fast, and you're always wanting to try to go a little faster. So I traded that car, I sold that car and bought another car. I had a 55 Chevrolet, which was an old gasser from the 60s. I raced it for a year or two and then had a chance to buy a more modern tube chassis 68 Camaro. This was probably early 80s. And nitrous was just then coming out. There hadn't been a whole lot of it out at that time. I got interested in it, became a dealer for the CompuCar nitrous system. Sold them. I was the only place in town that could refill bottles. The engine that I had in that Camaro, Gene Fulton built. And this was early enough. This was before Gene Fulton fooled with big blocks. He was strictly small blocks. So it was kind of, what do you want that big thing for? That kind of stuff. Put that car and got it running, run nitrous on it, and we were typically one of the 3 fastest cars at the local tracks around here. About 1986, I had been building cars. I had a shop, and I decided I was going to make a business out of it. I stopped drag racing. I sold the car so I could concentrate on the shop. And we did hot rods, muscle cars, restorations, and in Spartanburg at the time. So that pretty much took my time, because I worked a full-time job as an automotive engineer and ran this shop. So I basically worked 100 hours a week for about 10 years. Did some really nice stuff. I built a 34 Chevrolet Cabriolet that pretty much won everything it went to. It won top 25 at the Street Rod Nationals. It won top 25 at the Sage of the Pass run in Pigeon Forge. And that was what really kind of kicked off my shop. In other words, it finally got on the map a little bit. Ran that for a while, and after 10 years of doing that, I had the opportunity to get a big promotion with the company that I was working for. Decided it was time to do something different. I just had run myself to death. So we closed the shop, picked up, moved to Pennsylvania for 3 years, and pretty much miserable the whole time. There wasn't any car stuff going on. It was always cold. It was gray 280 days out of the year. And I'm not one that likes cold weather much. I can stand the heat more than I can stand the cold. While I didn't want to change companies, the company that I was working for didn't have anything available at the time back here, so I started looking with other companies, and was offered a job here in Anderson, where I live now. And so we moved back to Anderson. Built a house, kind of got that started, and I'm in automotive quality, so there's a lot of stress from customer requirements and dealing with issues and all that kind of stuff. My wife convinced me, said, you need something to take the stress off, have a stress reliever. And she said, you need to get another car, get another drag car. So didn't take long to convince me that was a good thing. Had a Malibu, big block Malibu on alcohol that would run index races. They were a lot of fun. And about, I guess it was 2012, the nostalgia racing started back. You know, Gregg drug his Night Stalker out of the woods, and basically he was going to Greer on Thursday night to run and, you know, put on a show, and trying to get some folks to run with him. And that was always a real exciting part for me, to go watch do that stuff, especially the 4-speed part. As time progressed, we got into building the Southeast Gassers. Gregg, Porter, and Quayne Stott, a couple others, started basically just doing events where they go down to Greer on Friday or Thursday night, and just match race kind of running, you know, and the interest grew, and other people started building cars. Dave Van Alstyne owned this car, and he bought this car because he wanted the motor out of it to put in a Corvette that he wanted to build. And Dave has quite a few Corvettes. He loves Corvettes. So when he first bought this car, it was an automatic car, and he paid to have Quayne, Stott, and their bunch convert it to 4-speed. When they did, they weren't quite ready to start on his Corvette, so he let Mitch Stott, his brother, who's a pro mod champion, drive this car a few races, you know, get it out there and all that kind of stuff. And he did right well. He won several races with it. But when they got ready to start on the Corvette, they decided that the Corvette was too heavy and the engine in this car wasn't going to be big enough. After we bought this car, currently didn't have a name. Prior to David Van Alstyne buying the car was up north, and it was called Mr. Machine. But when I bought it, there was no name on it. My wife came up with a suggestion that we call it Good Vibrations, like the Beach Boys song. So it kind of stuck, and I kind of liked it, and that's how we came up with that name. I won't go through the ones that didn't pass the test, but there's some of them that are probably not appropriate for video. You know, it's the Good Vibration 33 Willys. You know, that's what the car is. It didn't look like this. When I got it, it was a different color orange, and the reason it's a different color orange is I wrecked it at Greer. The car drifted towards the center line. I didn't realize it was drifting as far as it had. It was pretty cold weather. Track was a little cold, and of course, everybody knows when the cars get in cool air, they make more power, and they tend to drift to the left. When my car launched, and it was drifting a little bit, but I didn't think it was anything I couldn't drive out of. And about the point, I guess it was probably 330 feet, I was about ready to make the third gear shift, and I had gone over to the center of the track more than I had realized, gotten into marbles, and when I made that shift, it upset the car enough that the car made an immediate right-hand turn, and I hit the wall 100 mile an hour or more, something like that. It flipped the car on the side, and I slid across the finish line on the driver's side of the car, busted up pretty bad, had to reclip it. So since then, I have been rebuilding and restoring, repainting, redoing. There wasn't anything wrong with the engine, but I've redone the engine. You know, it's a drag race thing. You know, you're never satisfied with what you got. You got to do a little more. You know.